Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, November is National American History and Founders Month, as proclaimed by our great President Donald J. Trump. Now, when I first heard this, I had, let's just say, mixed emotions. But I am warming to the idea. We do, in fact, need to know more about American history, and we do need to know more about our founding fathers. Take some of the mythology out of it. So, tonight, we're going to talk about George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Patrick Henry, perhaps three of the best-known founding fathers. George Washington was a man who believed that he should be a military commander because he read two books on war. The British Army thought that was a little silly, but George Washington's brother didn't know the governor, so he wound up getting a commission as a commander, and they stuck him out in the middle of nowhere where he couldn't do any harm. Then the French and Indian War popped off, and after what is best described as a comically one-sided battle, George Washington is forced to surrender to the French. Because, it gets better, because he is too embarrassed to admit that he can't read French, he just signs the surrender document, which not only surrendered his forces, but also admitted that he committed war crimes and assassinated a French diplomat. There is a utterly preposterous idea that some people, some slave owners, were nice to their slaves. First, that wasn't a thing. Even if it was, it certainly didn't apply to George Washington. In addition to the normal beatings and all of the horrible stuff that went along with it, if you bothered him and you were his slave, he would go out of his way to find traders from the West Indies to sell you to so you could never see your family again. When abolition began, there was the Gradual Abolition Act of 1780 in Pennsylvania. Washington used loopholes and technicalities to make sure that, well, his slaves weren't freed. He would go as far as to make sure they were never in Pennsylvania for more than 6 months. He would take them out of the state so he could restart the clock. Now, there are some people who had a different kind of relationship with their slaves. Thomas Jefferson would be one of them. Presumably after the death of his wife, he began a relationship, I don't know what to call it, with one of his slaves who happened to be her half-sister. They had several children who he raised as slaves. I should also mention that when this relationship most likely started, she was 14 and he was in his 40s. Patrick Henry is best known for saying, "Give me liberty or give me death." But that apparently does not apply if you are suffering from postpartum depression, which is what his wife was most likely suffering from after the birth of their, I think, 6th child, when he locked her in a cellar for 4 years. It is believed that without liberty, she chose death and ended herself. She is buried in an unmarked grave. Those probably aren't the stories you know about the Founding Fathers. You know about George Washington's wooden teeth. They weren't wooden, they were the teeth of slaves. There's a lot of mythology. We get a lot of history wrong. November is normally, and still is, Native American Heritage Month. I'm going to put a link in the comments down below to show that we get those stories wrong too. Anyway, so happy National American History and Founders Month. Definitely look up a little bit about our founders. You might be surprised. There's one guy, Dr. Rush, who spread yellow fever all over Philadelphia. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good night.